Monty and I designed the first step of our Rube Goldberg machine. Our initial design is as shown here, where we had a ball roll down a ramp and into a set of dominoes, which would knock another ball down a cardboard chute, which would then hit a seesaw, which would pull a string that would trigger a Nerf gun and fire a dart into a piece of cardboard, which would then be used to trigger the step for the next sub-team. However, we ran into a few issues with this design, particularly in the second half, involving the Nerf gun. This string was not enough to pull the trigger of the Nerf gun, and we needed a lot more force than was being provided. So we ended up redesigning our project. Our final design is as shown here, where the first part of it stayed the same with a ball rolling down a ramp and hitting dominoes, which then knock another ball off of the table. This ball then hits the seesaw, which would trigger a car rolling down another ramp by hitting a flexible piece of track. This car would then hit a book, which would trigger the next sub-team step. The car was in replacement of the Nerf gun in our original design.
Regina and I designed the second part of the Rube Goldberg machine. Our initial design involved the book from the last step knocking over a standing piece of cardboard, which falls to knock into a marble. The marble would roll forward off the edge of the table into a bucket, which would trigger a pulley system to lift a cardboard ramp at an angle, causing a second marble to roll down the ramp. The marble would hit a toy car and finally set a chain of dominoes into motion, leading into the next step. We ended up simplifying this design because after brainstorming several ways to create a pulley system, we decided it would be the most effective to just omit that step. Another flaw with our initial design was that a falling piece of cardboard would not set a marble into forward motion. I had to adjust this design by changing the cardboard to a box of cards, which has more mass, and having it fall on a beam that, when lifted, allowed the marble to move forward. We then had the marble bump into a wheel, which rolled down a ramp to hit the toy car, which hit the dominoes. Our initial design used 2 marbles instead of 1 marble and a wheel, but since the car I used had a higher mass than expected, we needed something larger to set it into motion.
Okay, so Eric and I were working together on the third part of our Rube Goldberg machine. And so our section, as the previous sections ended with dominoes, we started with dominoes. So our dominoes will hit our spike ball off onto our spike ball net, which bounces into the bucket balancing on the level, which pulls up a bag full of golf balls to allow a golf ball to roll down, which then hits into a can, allowing the can to roll. So originally we actually planned on having the spike ball net straight with the horizontal, but we found as we were designing it that the spike ball just couldn't bounce into the bucket far enough. That might be partially due to the spike ball net being old and not as tense as a new one. But so we had to adjust it actually to have an angle as we see in the final design. Another thing we actually had to experiment with a lot and change as we went through our design was where the level was placed on the step stool to balance. Because as we were changing what the heavy weights were in the bags and where the bucket was, that really determined where it needed to balance, obviously. So that took some time to work through as well. But besides that, the rest of our subsection went pretty smoothly, and we finished off with the can rolling so that the fourth section could start off with that. Thank you.
All right, our stage was stage 4. I'm Benny, and Chris Agritelis is my partner. So what we did is the previous pair started with a can rolling down a slope. So we started ours with a can hitting a stack of CD cases that were lined up in domino fashion. First can hit one of the CDs knocked over in a row. Then we had a hammer contraption, which was set up as a pendulum. So when you would and I had the hammer being held up like this, and the last CD case would knock out the stick that was holding the hammer, and the hammer would swing. And then at the base of that hammer was a baseball, as you can see here. So that would swing, hit a baseball. I did some calculations that are on the poster, which will tell you the final speed of the baseball, stuff like that. Then we moved on. Chris did his section of the video and had a ball rolling into another set of dominoes type. I think he used books. This baseball hit the books, and then at the top of the very last book was a ball, and as that last book fell over, it fell into a basketball hoop that was sitting under a table. So that was our project, and then we didn't really have any complications going through the project. We had a few design changes from the beginning. Like initially we had a catapult that would launch the basketball into the hoop, but that turned out to be too difficult. So we moved on to use just a book falling in, which seemed to be easier, and we could actually get it done consistently. So that is our project.